The Sandringham Accord remains on the official royal registry. You can check it out right now. It's been out since January of 2020. It states very clearly that the Sussexes will not use their HRH titles in public for commercial purposes or at all. That was the deal. Both sides put their signatures. Her late Majesty the Queen gave her royal assent. 5 years later, those two words, Your Royal Highness, have appeared on Meghan's Instagram in a gift basket delivered to a podcast host, on screen in a Netflix production, and in Meghan's own voice. These aren't tabloid accusations. These are 3 taped incidents on platforms with audiences, in violation of the existing agreement. Moreover, an insider with a close association to Prince William has corroborated this to the Daily Beast, on the record. Then what does he do? He takes the throne? Tonight, we will be taking a look at all sides of this story. Not the lurid gossip, but the legal and financial facts, the Sandringham Agreement and its precise terms, the 3 breaches, each more serious than the last, the collapse of industry partnerships worth $120 million, the exodus of 18 staff, the birth of a story Vanity Fair couldn't verify, and her own father called overblown, and the precise legal basis, called letters patent, which will ultimately decide the entire question of what the Sussex brand is really built on, and its future when that foundation is removed. First, the Accord. Because without the Accord, nothing else in this story makes sense. Harry and Meghan Markle's split from the royal family is official. They will officially step down as senior royals on March 31st. In January 2020, Meghan and Harry met with the late Queen Elizabeth at Sandringham to agree on the terms of their departure from their royal duties. The agreement was put in writing, signed, and then published on the official royal website, where it still sits. It is clear, with rules, that the Sussexes will not use their titles commercially or in any way. In exchange, they keep the titles of Duke and Duchess of Sussex and leave with their dignity intact and their futures in their own hands. That was the understanding, put down in writing and signed by all parties. They made a big money deal when they brought in Meghan Markle and her husband, about $20 million, and that's where they're going. Jump ahead to April in the year 2025. Meghan posted a letter from the Vice President of Ukraine on Instagram, and it's unedited. No note explains the diplomatic formality of the salutation, nor do they offer any explanation as to why the title used by the sender was not correct. The letter is reproduced in full, starting with the words, Your Royal Highness, at the top, for millions of followers of a commercial social media platform to read. And when the Daily Beast reached out to a source close to Prince William for a no-holds-barred assessment, they said, You'd have to be stupid to think she didn't know what she was doing when she posted that message unedited to her stories. One source put it simply, Every time you think they can't make it worse, they make it worse. They were supposed to walk away with dignity over the HR titles, but it looks like she is leveraging it to push products now. But the Instagram post wasn't a fluke. If you want a more complete picture that other outlets leave out, please click the like button. It's free and helps to reach a bigger audience. Around the same time, podcast host Jamie King received a gift basket from Meghan personally, addressed with the HR title. It was not a message from some foreign diplomat about his business. It was a private gift sent by commercial channels, with a title she had formally promised not to use in any capacity. And then there's the Netflix footage. This is more important than the others, for there is no letter, no basket, no thing that could be put down to another's wording. This is Meghan on camera, on a commercial streaming platform, watched by tens of millions, in her own words. When Mindy Kaling referred to her as Meghan Markle on set, Meghan said, It's so funny that you keep calling me Meghan Markle. I'm Sussex now, you know. This is a woman who signed a formal agreement not to commercially exploit her royal status, but who corrected a celebrity for doing so on Netflix, for all time to see. You can't take it back or pass it off as a diplomatic courtesy or the wording of some other. The Sandringham Agreement is easily available on the official royal website. We have the Instagram post on record. The gift basket is recorded. Netflix gets the correction on the movie. Royal commentator Kinsey Schofield summed it up. Harry and Meghan are not allowed to use their titles for commercial gain, but they clearly are. Privacy expert Trevor Cook said the royal family could take legal action because of the commercial exploitation of a title she had contractually agreed not to use for financial gain. Legal professionals have a term for the situation this creates: material misrepresentation. The very basis upon which a commercial arrangement was premised turns out to be legally contestable. We will return to the implications of this, but first, the industry has already spoken, and the figures are remarkable. Subscribe to Royal Box and tell us in the comments below which of these 3 violations you think is the worst. In 2020, Netflix reportedly struck a $100 million deal with Harry and Meghan, explicitly on the premise of royal access and storytelling. The Duke and Duchess of Sussex were set to bring the monarchy to a global streaming audience, and for a time, the audience numbers proved them right. Then, in March of 2026, Netflix officially ended its partnership with Archwell Productions. No dramatic announcement, no public discord, just an unequivocal ending. 4 words that summed up the atmosphere within Netflix, according to industry insiders. We're done with them. Previously, multi-million-dollar podcast deal Spotify was supposed to provide years of content, but it delivered 1 season. When the contract was done, Spotify executive Bill Simmons didn't offer a polite goodbye. He called them frauds. Not a disappointment, not a creative mismatch, but frauds. That designation came from inside the company. Then, in April of 2026, Penguin Random House, the same publishing house that turned Harry's memoir into a global bestseller and had every commercial incentive to keep a productive relationship with the Sussexes, allowed a reported $20 million book deal to quietly expire without renewal. Sources said both sides had effectively burnt bridges, with the publisher in particular feeling financially aggrieved by the arrangement and the disparity between what was delivered and promised. This particular characterization of burned, not disappointed or creatively misaligned, is very powerful beyond a single contract. Publishers don't enter into 9-figure relationships lightly. They do their due diligence, looking at the author's platform, track record, and commercial viability. Penguin Random House did these assessments in 2020 and came up with a valuation. By 2026, they had reached a completely different conclusion. In short, Netflix wired $100 million. Poof. A multi-million-dollar Spotify deal is gone. $20 million book deal, gone. 3 of the leading figures in their fields coming to the same conclusion within months of one another. This is not a hiccup. This is not bad timing. That is the judgment. And every one of those deals was built on the same thing. The Sussex name, the royal identity, the Duchess brand. That was the hook. That was what made the numbers work. Take that title away for good, officially, legally, and the commercial logic that makes each of those deals good not only weakens, it disappears. It actually paves the way for the possibility that William could reasonably, when he becomes king, strip Harry of his title. What's left is a lifestyle brand with a new name, marketing at price points that were only justifiable when the vendor was the Duchess of Sussex. Now, let us go to the basis on which those agreements were built. There was a story before the deals, before the streaming deals. A story Meghan had been telling for 2 decades. When she was 11 years old, she saw a Procter & Gamble commercial that showed women all over America fighting greasy pots and pans. She was furious. So she wrote letters to Hillary Clinton, to P&G, to senators. And according to Meghan, it worked. P&G changed the advertisement. An 11-year-old girl changed corporate America, Clinton personally replied in writing. She has told this story at the United Nations, at the One Young World Summit, in her profile in Vanity Fair, and in Colombia in 2024. For 2 decades, it was the cornerstone of her public image. The girl who saw wrong, picked up her pen, and won. There is one problem. The fact-checkers at Vanity Fair looked into this. They contacted P&G directly and talked to advertising historians. What they found, or rather what they could not find, was enough to make them omit the anecdote from their article altogether. They were unable to confirm it. They found not a shred of evidence that she ever received a personal reply from Hillary Clinton. No letter, no record, no confirmation from anyone in Clinton's office. Then her own father weighed in. Thomas Markle told the camera in his documentary from 2020, "I think Meghan was part of a letter-writing campaign of sorts. The story of how she single-handedly changed the ad might have been a bit embellished. It wasn't one activist. It wasn't one girl who changed corporate America. It was a student doing homework, writing letters." Then Meghan's own PR team contacted journalists who opted not to include the P&G story in the official media bulletin sent to the press. This was not because the story was no longer pertinent, but because it was now a reputation risk to circulate. This is a specific and significant decision, one that says those who were paid to be her image keepers had decided that a story she'd been telling for 20 years in public, and that she'd used to build her entire humanitarian identity, was no longer safe enough to include in official communications. Newspaper journalists have reported that William is at odds with his brother and that their relationship has broken down. Her father dismissed the story she told to get herself a United Nations ambassadorship, the very foundation of the whole Meghan Markle brand, as fabricated. Vanity Fair was unable to confirm it. No one at P&G, no one at Clinton's office, no one in the history of advertising could confirm the letter even existed. If her very first publicly told story about herself does not stand up to fact-checking, it raises a very specific and disturbing question about everything that has been built on top of it. Let's go to the staff. The staff figures tell a story PR strategies can't change. She told Oprah that she felt let down by the institution, that she was a person failed by the system. It's a compelling account, but it leaves one crucial question unanswered. If Meghan was the one being mistreated, why did 18 people leave her professional orbit between 2020 and 2026? That's 18 documented resignations, or an average of 3 per year. These were not anonymous sources or tabloid speculation, but people with names, careers, and a professional reputation they had every reason to protect, but chose not to. Samantha Cohen was one of the most experienced of the palace aides, having served the British royal family for 17 years. She knew all about royal service at the top and had a track record. In 2018, she became Meghan's private secretary. The plan was for Cohen to stay for 6 months, helping Meghan get on her feet until she could find a permanent replacement. But she stayed for 18 months, not of her own choice, but because a suitable long-term replacement could not be found. When a replacement was finally found, the palace sent that person flying out to Africa, specifically to shadow Cohen on a royal tour. That replacement quit before the tour was completed, still in Africa. In 2024, Cohen herself confirmed this in an interview with the Herald's Sun. She was also among 10 members of staff who were formally interviewed by Buckingham Palace as part of an independent inquiry into claims of bullying. This review was privately financed by Queen Elizabeth in person. The results were never released to the public, and the following changes were made quietly, without announcement. But it is significant that a sitting monarch has agreed to fund an independent investigation into her own grandson's household. Such action is typically only done when those with the most information and the greatest risk in admitting a problem have concluded that the problem is real enough to warrant an official response. 18 known resignations in 6 years, 3 a year on average, by senior professionals who had worked at the highest levels of public life, who knew the meaning of discretion and pressure and the peculiar demands of royal service, and yet they left. They don't just leave. They don't just give their stories. They give their stories after long delays and in very measured tones, as if they realise the seriousness of going on record. Their accounts follow a very particular pattern. There's a personal pattern too. People who used to be her closest confidants have reported the same phenomenon that happened in Meghan's professional circle. There's now an Urban Dictionary entry for what happens to those who get close to Meghan Markle. The word is marled, which means to be totally abandoned by someone after being a part of his or her life. The fact there is a dictionary entry for it, showing a pattern so recognisable, so consistent, so well documented, gives more insight than any single account could. She dressed Meghan for years, helped her through the media scrutiny of the early Harry years, was at the royal wedding, the baby shower, and went on royal tours with her. Multiple sources said she was the only person Meghan trusted fully. Then, in June of 2020, Mulroney found himself in the middle of a public spat with a black influencer. Meghan immediately cut off talking to him. The controversy was apparently the excuse Meghan had been looking for to cut ties with Mulroney for good, ending a 9-year association the moment it became a liability, a source told Page 6. Then there was Piers Morgan. In 2016, Meghan followed him on social media, messaged him and met him for a drink in London. That same evening, she met Harry at a party. Morgan then recounted what happened next with brutal simplicity. That was the last I heard from Meghan Markle. These are not people who turned against her and spoke out. They were first abandoned, quietly, without explanation, without the conversation that 3 decades of friendship or 9 years of close professional confidence surely warranted. Eventually, when they did talk, it was in the language of the truly wounded, who had spent much time trying to comprehend what had happened to them, not the language of those selling a story, but of those trying to find sense in something that had no obvious logic, and which had led them to an unwelcome conclusion. Now let us take this back to its ultimate consequence, because the personal and professional patterns meet at a single point, which has a legal name. The Sussex brand was never really Meghan, it was 2 words before her name, Duchess of Sussex. That was the key to unlock doors, the reason Netflix cut a 9-figure check, the force that put her on the United Nations stage. It wasn't her TV resume, her activism, the origin story about a letter to Procter & Gamble, or her personal response from Hillary Clinton, which her own PR team eventually stopped including in her press materials. The title was borrowed, the 2 words she agreed in writing not to use commercially, and then systematically used as the commercial bedrock for every major deal she entered into thereafter. It was always conditional, and the condition was always the possibility of its being revoked. Whatever titles come and go, Harry is constitutionally and historically part of the House of Windsor. He has an inheritable place as a prince, son of a king and grandson of a queen. Meghan Rachel Markle of Los Angeles, a lighting director by profession, was granted the courtesy title Duchess of Sussex by royal prerogative, just because she married the right man at the right time. It was never hers by right of birth or inherent claim, it was given. And what is granted by the royal prerogative can be revoked in the same way. King William is not going to stand for this, a source close to Prince William told the Daily Beast exactly what will happen when he ascends the throne. He will be king, and the titles will be just taken away. Not threat, and not palace gossip, but a confirmed position on record from a named source. Once the letters patent are issued, and the titles are permanently and officially revoked, any business arrangement Meghan has made since 2020 will be retroactively contested. What did every business partner, every retailer, every investor sign on the dotted line to? What were they sold, exactly? Did they make deals with the former actress Meghan Markle or with the Duchess of Sussex? An identity never meant to be commercially exploited by signed agreement, and which will at some point no longer legally exist. There is no comfortable answer to this question, and unlike a fleeting negative headline, it doesn't fade with the next news cycle. It grows, and it shifts from conversations within corporate strategy to conversations that eventually make their way into legal filings. Material misrepresentation does not require that a particular act be done to trigger it. It only requires that the underlying premise of a business venture is legally void, and an individual chooses to formally challenge it. Tom Bower has written 2 books on this subject, Revenge, 2022, and Betrayal, 2026, drawing on 80 different sources in both. Despite Meghan's famously aggressive and proactive legal team fighting him at every turn, Bower has not had a single successful legal challenge to either of his books. Not a single instance. It is quite remarkable, beyond the usual observation of his painstaking research, that a public figure who has a well-documented history of suing publications that publish content she disputes has apparently said nothing about the precise claims that Bower makes. This suggests that the author's particular documentation and sources are strong enough that the claimant would be far more at risk from a legal challenge than the author. Bower knows where those documents are, and so do those people that signed those documents. If you take away the title Duchess, you basically blow up the foundation of every business she's done since the year 2020. All the deals, the branding, the products, the whole operation, it was designed around a character she explicitly agreed not to exploit commercially, one that a future queen has sworn to give up, no matter what name she goes by later. The provable documentary evidence is still the same. The artisanal preserves may have a new wrapper, the Instagram feed can be recalibrated. The signed agreement has not been altered. The content filmed for Netflix cannot be altered. You cannot change the 10 people who gave evidence during the bullying inquiry. The 18 staff members who left can't be changed. And if the story of her Papua New Guinea roots, the very first public narrative she ever shared about herself, the foundation of the entire Meghan Markle commercial identity, could not survive the scrutiny of a fact-checking process at Vanity Fair, and was described by her own father as an academic exercise that had been embellished significantly over a period of 20 years in front of a global audience, then what does it say about everything that was built upon that foundation? Parliament can take away a title, which is 2 words, but the big story is all the other stuff. If the original story was indeed embellished, as her father himself said, then what Prince William is preparing to remove is not just 1 word before her name. It is the final structural element that holds up the rest of the story. This point was made years ago by Naki Pretty, talking about a totally different situation. When she decides you are out of her life, she can be incredibly detached, precise, absolute, and definitive. What nobody thought would happen was that the established institution, older than anyone involved in this tale, would finally use the same approach. Detached, precise, absolute, and final. The institution Meghan spent 5 years publicly trying to discredit has one last recourse, and it is precisely the same maneuver in the most literal sense of the word. There will be no negotiation, no appeal, no reinterpretations, just the quiet and irreversible withdrawal of the two names that made the commercial venture possible. The future of the Sussex brand is reaching a tipping point that no social media strategy or product relaunch can fix. The title will be revoked. The agreement is now on the official online presence. The breaches have been officially registered. The legal consequences flowing from these three separate elements are not a hypothetical. They are a process that will begin when William becomes king and will run its course without the consent or cooperation of any party. What do you think is the most legally significant part of this story? The infringements of the title? The failed business arrangements? The investigation into the letters patent? Drop us a comment with your thoughts. Sign up for Royal Box so you don't miss any of our upcoming revelations. And if this is the type of deep dive analysis you came for, please hit the like button on this video. Your engagement really means a lot. Until next time.